What if the moon vanished tonight? Prologue. The familiar neighbor. It is the keeper of our nights, the silver disk that has guarded the dreams of every human who has ever lived, from the first hominids looking up in awe to the Apollo astronauts who left footprints on its dusty surface. The moon is more than just a light in the dark. It is our planet's anchor. It is our first calendar, the rhythm that dictates the tides, the compass for nocturnal migrations, and the silent muse for millennia of poetry, art, and science. It is the most constant thing we know. We measure our months by it. We plan our harvests by it. We wish upon it. It is always there, a silent, stabilizing partner in our chaotic dance through the cosmos. We take its presence for granted, as we do the ground beneath our feet. We assume it will be there tomorrow, and the night after, and for the billion years to come. Until one Tuesday at 10:47 p.m., Coordinated Universal Time, it wasn't. It didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply vanished. In that one impossible second, the Earth lost its companion of 4.5 billion years. The anchor was cut, and the clock began ticking on the most profound apocalypse imaginable. This is the story of what happened next. This is the story of the Orphan Planet. Chapter 1. The Void in the Sky. The first 24 hours. The first person to officially notice was Dr. Elena Rostova, an astronomer at the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii. She was tracking a near-Earth asteroid, a routine, boring night of data. At 10:47 p.m. UTC, 12:47 p.m. local time, she slewed her telescope to the moon to calibrate her instruments. The screen was blank. She re-entered the coordinates. Blank. She checked the lens cap, a rookie mistake she hadn't made in 20 years. She ran diagnostics. She checked 3 other feeds from observatories across the Pacific. All of them showed the same impossible thing. Nothing. Just a field of stars, suddenly brighter, sharper, and terrifyingly uninterrupted. The panic didn't start with a bang. It started with a frantic email chain between the world's astronomers. But it only took 2 hours for the news to leak. By Yo1 Seer UTC, the internet was breaking. Moon gone was the #1 trend on every platform. In Europe and Africa, where night had just fallen, millions poured out of their homes, looking up at the sky, demanding to see for themselves. And they saw it. Or rather, they didn't see it. The night was wrong. It wasn't the peaceful new moon darkness. It was a deep, visceral, star-punched blackness. A void. A hole in reality where our neighbor was supposed to be. Chaos is a polite word for what followed. Religions scrambled, with leaders either proclaiming the end times or desperately trying to calm their flocks. Governments held emergency sessions, their first priority being to deny that it was a rogue nation's superweapon. It wasn't. No human weapon could move the moon, let alone vaporize it. The financial markets, sensing the end of predictable stability, entered a freefall that would make 1929 look like a minor correction. For the first 24 hours, humanity was united in a single, primal scream of confusion and terror. We were, all at once, children who had looked away for a second only to find our mother had vanished in the crowd. We were horrified. We were grieving. But we were still blissfully unaware of the physics. We were staring at the empty sky, completely oblivious to the fact that the oceans were, at that very moment, preparing to strike. Chapter 2. The Slap of the Ocean, the 48-hour catastrophe. Humanity was staring at the sky, but the real killer was already at their feet. The oceans knew the moon was gone before we did. For billions of years, the moon's gravity has pulled on Earth's oceans, creating a tidal bulge. This isn't just the high and low tide you see at the beach. It's a permanent, planet-girdling mountain of displaced water, a colossal mass held in a delicate, invisible grip. At 10:47 p.m. UTC, that grip vanished. The bulge, containing trillions of tons of water, was suddenly released. It was like letting go of a planet-sized rubber band. The water didn't just settle, it collapsed, and then it rebounded. From the middle of every ocean, a series of gigantic waves, collapse waves, were born. This was not a single tsunami which travels from a specific earthquake. This was a chaotic global event. The entire surface of the ocean began to oscillate, to slosh violently back and forth in its basins. The waves that reached the continents were not waves, they were moving cliffs of water. In New York, the sun had not yet risen. The first wave, traveling at the speed of a jetliner, hit the dark coastline not as a crest, but as a sudden vertical rise of the sea itself. The water rose 10, then 20, then 50 meters in a matter in minutes. The Statue of Liberty vanished. Lower Manhattan was submerged before the sirens could finish their first wail. In Shanghai, Tokyo, and Sydney, the same wave struck as a wall of churning, debris-filled destruction. It didn't just flood the cities, it scoured them. It pulverized skyscrapers and dragged them back out to sea, along with millions of souls. For 48 hours, the great scouring continued. The waves bounced off continents, met other waves in the open ocean to create monstrous rogue peaks, and returned to assault the coasts again and again. Every coastal city on Earth, every shipping port, every beachside town was erased from the map. By the time the chaos subsided, the world's coastlines were unrecognizable, just miles of newly carved mudflats and the skeletons of flooded cities. The ocean finally grew quiet. It wasn't dead. The sun's gravity still exerted a pull, and new, weaker tides, solar tides, began to establish their gentle, predictable rhythm. But they were tides in a dead ocean. The chaos had churned up so much sediment that the water was a thick brown soup, blocking all sunlight. The foundation of the entire marine food chain had just been extinguished. Chapter 3. The Broken Biological Clock. The First Year Catastrophe. The tsunamis had receded. Billions were dead, and coastal civilization was erased. For the survivors deep inland, after the initial shock, a strange normalcy began to set in. The sun still rose, the wind still blew, and the earth, though scarred, seemed to still be turning. It was a deception. They couldn't hear the silent breaking that was happening in every ecosystem. The first battle was fought on the savannah. For millions of years, the chase between lion and gazelle, owl and mouse, was a dance calibrated by moonlight. Bright full moons were a disadvantage for the hunter. Dark new moons were perfect for the stalk. Now, every night was a new moon. The night was so profoundly black that prey couldn't see predator, and predators couldn't see prey. Nocturnal hunters, evolved to use the dim light, were now effectively blind. They began to starve in droves. Prey animals, living in constant, heightened terror, never dared leave their burrows. The balance of the plains was broken. But the real tragedy was happening beneath the surface of the muddy brown oceans. Thousands of marine species, from crabs to fish, had evolved to time their reproductive cycles to one single cosmic signal: the full moon. At the Great Barrier Reef, or what was left of it, November passed. For millennia, this was the night of the Great Spawning, when billions of coral polyps would simultaneously release their eggs and sperm, triggered by the full moon following the spring. November came and went. The signal never arrived. There was no spawn, not one. Around the world, sea turtle hatchlings, which instinctively look for the bright reflection of the moon on the waves to find their way to the ocean, now scrambled directionlessly on the black sand, becoming easy prey. Billions of moths and migratory birds, which use the moon as a fixed compass to navigate, now flew towards the stars, which move and were lost. They flew until they exhausted themselves and fell from the sky. The world wasn't ending in fire or ice. It was ending in missed appointments. In the first year without a moon, humanity was busy rebuilding cities further inland and grappling with an empty sky. They didn't realize that in that silence the Earth had become sterile. The entire global food chain was collapsing from the bottom up. And as the astronomers, those who were left, finally turned their telescopes back to the sky, they were no longer looking for the moon. They were measuring the planet's tilt, and they noticed something far more terrifying than any tsunami. The number, 23.5 degrees, was beginning to drift. Chapter 4. The Drunken Earth, the First Century. Humanity is appallingly resilient. We don't just survive, we adapt. 100 years after the event, the world had settled into a grim new normal. Civilization hadn't collapsed entirely, it had contracted. The coastal cities were saltwater-logged monuments, cursed history lessons. New inland capitals, built along major rivers, became the hubs of human existence. We adapted to the star-punched blackness of the night sky. We adapted to the barren, brown oceans. We adapted to telling our grandchildren stories of the before time, of a great silver orb that used to command the heavens. It became myth. But in the skeletal universities and observatories, the scientists weren't trading in myths. They were grappling with a truth far more terrifying than any tsunami. Here was the problem. The Earth tilts at 23.5 degrees. It's the reason we have seasons. But it doesn't just tilt. It is held at that tilt by an invisible tether, the moon's gravity. The moon is the gyroscope, the anchor, the big brother that stops the other gravitational giants, mostly Jupiter and the Sun, from pushing Earth around. Now, that big brother was gone. For the first few decades, the change was imperceptible. 0.01 degrees here, 0.05 degrees there. Governments, busy dealing with famine and reconstruction, dismissed the warnings. The axis is drifting, they'd say, worry about the corn harvest. But by year 80, it could no longer be ignored. The Earth began to get drunk. Its axis began to wobble. The summer in the northern hemisphere that year lasted 3 weeks longer than it should have, and it was hotter than any summer in recorded history. On the other side of the planet, the Australian winter was also longer and brutally colder. The seasons were no longer following the calendar. They were being stretched and distorted. Astronomers could now measure the tilt shifting by over 2 full degrees. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to start melting the permanent ice cap in Greenland. Enough to cause droughts that dried up the very rivers the new inland capitals depended on. Humanity had survived the immediate shock of Chapter 2 and the quiet decay of Chapter 3. Now, they were facing a new reality. Their planet was no longer stable. The ground beneath their feet was solid, but the very frame of the world was beginning to wobble. The drunken stumble had begun, and it heralded a millennia-long bender of chaos to come. Chapter 5. The Great Wobble, Millennia 1, 10,000. If Chapter 4 was a drunken Earth, Chapter 5 was a blackout-drunk Earth. 1,000 years after the event, humanity had been beaten back to a near Neolithic state. Adaptation is impossible when the rules of the planet itself change faster than evolution can keep up. What was once a fertile, temperate zone was now a parched desert for 50 years, before abruptly becoming a flooded marshland for the next 50. In year 1200, the Earth's tilt drifted to 10 degrees. The result? Seasons almost vanished. The equator became a permanent, scorching band of fire, while the poles were locked in eternal ice. The temperature differential between these zones created winds, hypercanes, that scoured the planet at 500 km/h. In year 3000, the wobble sent the axis careening to 45 degrees. The result? Seasons became ludicrously extreme. In summer, London, if it still existed, would be hotter than the Sahara with a midnight sun. In winter, the sun would barely rise and the city would be locked in darkness and kilometers of ice. Massive ice caps formed and melted in short, violent cycles, causing global superfloods every few centuries. Each swing of the Earth's axis was a new extinction event. The descendants of humanity, if they could be called that, were no longer builders or astronomers. They were desperate, scattered nomads. They had no calendars, as calendars had become meaningless. They had no agriculture, as no crop cycle was predictable. Their entire religion was based not on a lost moon, but on the vicious whims of the sun. They lived in a world run by a chaotic god, where ice ages and fire ages were not geological events, but seasons within a single lifetime. They hid in caves and bunkers, telling fragmented myths of an ancient golden age, when the sky was stable, when food grew from the ground, and when a great silver light used to guard the night. To them, it was an unbelievable fairy tale. To us, it was just history. And the Wobble still was not finished. It was on its way to an even worse extreme. Chapter 6. The Furnace and the Freezer. The 100,000th Century. Welcome to Earth at 85 degrees. After 100,000 years of chaotic wobbling, the planet's axis has finally toppled over. It now spins on its side, much like the planet Uranus. This state has erased every last concept of season or climate we ever knew. The world is now split by two absolute extremes. 1. The furnace, the 20-year summer. Imagine the northern hemisphere, or what's left of it, is in its summer. But this is not your 3-month summer. Because Earth is tilted 85 degrees, the North Pole points almost directly at the sun. For 20 consecutive years, the sun never sets. It just spirals in the sky, 24 hours a day, baking the planet relentlessly. Any ice that tries to form is instantly vaporized. The oceans, now slightly clearer, begin to boil at the equator. The land is baked so dry it cracks and vitrifies, turning to a glass desert. There is no rain, only suffocating steam. Any living thing caught here is cooked in hours. It is a planetary-scale oven. 2. The freezer, the 20-year winter. Meanwhile, in the southern hemisphere, the opposite nightmare is unfolding. For 20 consecutive years, the sun never rises. This half of the planet is plunged into the absolute permanent darkness of deep space. The temperature plummets to minus 100 degrees Celsius. The very atmosphere above it freezes and falls as snow, frozen nitrogen and oxygen. Any moisture left becomes a continental ice sheet miles thick. This isn't just an ice age, this is the hard freeze of the Martian surface. 3. The twilight zone. Between these two extremes, there is no temperate zone. There is only a permanent storm zone. The only place the Earth is remotely livable is a narrow band near the equator where the sun rises and sets rapidly each day. But livable is a relative term. Air from the freezer, super cold and dense, is constantly pouring in, trying to fill the vacuum left by the rising, superheated air from the furnace. The result? The eternal winds. These are not normal winds. These are walls of air moving at supersonic speeds, over 1/200 km/h. They are permanent, planet-girdling storms powerful enough to flatten mountains and scour continents down to dust. They create an unending planetary scream. Any descendants of humanity are long gone. Even surface bacteria cannot survive this. The Earth is no longer a planet. It is a failed physics experiment, tortured by the two extremes of fire and ice. Chapter 7. The stubborn life, the distant future. The surface of the Earth is dead. It is a profound and total death. Between the 20-year furnace, the 20-year freezer, and the eternal winds screaming at supersonic speeds, no complex organic molecule can survive. The planet's face has been sterilized. The descendants of humanity, the descendants of trees and birds and fish, all have been scoured to dust, blasted across dry canyons. But Earth is a two-faced planet. While the surface is a failed physics experiment, deep below, life is holding on. Dive into the new ocean. Its surface may boil and freeze in cycles, but 5 kilometers down, no trace of light or surface temperature change can ever reach. Here, the pressure is immense and the temperature is regulated by the Earth's own core. Here, in the permanent dark, there are oases. The hydrothermal vents, fissures on the deep ocean floor where magma from the planet's core meets the water, are still active. They are still spewing a superheated soup of chemicals, sulfur, hydrogen, and clustered around them, life is still thriving. This is not life based on the sun. This is life that never cared about the sun, and therefore never noticed the moon was gone. They are the extremophiles, dense, white mats of archaea, ancient bacteria that feed directly on the sulfur and heat. They form the base carpet for bizarre tube worms and pale, blind crabs. It is an entirely self-contained ecosystem, running on geothermal energy. Likewise, deep within the Earth's crust, miles below the chaotic surface, other microbes persist in rock fissures, slowly eating minerals, reproducing perhaps once every 1,000 years. This is Earth's final legacy. Not cities, not poetry, not consciousness, just stubborn, trapped bacteria. This life will never evolve. It will never crawl onto the surface, never reconquer the planet. The surface is now a permanent barrier, more hostile than outer space. They will simply exist. A tiny, guttering flame, trapped in the basement of a burning house, blissfully unaware of the firestorm raging above. Meanwhile, in the moonless sky, the Milky Way galaxy stretches, unobscured, from horizon to horizon. A cold, lonely, and spectacular beauty, shining down on a planet that is dead. Almost. Conclusion: the lesson of the dead rock. From the deep hydrothermal vents, let us pull back one last time. Let us drift away from this tortured planet and look at it from a distance. There it is, the new Earth. A toppled, spinning orb, half scorched, half frozen, scoured by eternal winds and bathed in a near-permanent darkness, illuminated by the brilliant, indifferent beauty of a billion distant stars. We started this story by removing a single object, one rock, a dead celestial body we took for granted, and in doing so, we learned we didn't just lose a nightlight. We lost our coasts, Chapter 2. We lost the biological rhythm of the planet, the coral, and the birds, Chapter 3. We lost the very stability of our world, our seasons, Chapter 4. We lost a livable climate, Chapters 5 and 6. And finally, we lost the surface itself, Chapter 7. The moon, it turns out, was never just our neighbor. It was our protector. It was the anchor that held this fragile ship of Earth steady for long enough, billions of years, for something as delicate and complex as consciousness to evolve from the mud. Our existence was not an inevitability. It was a lucky accident. It required everything to be perfect. The right distance from the sun, the right chemical elements, and, just as importantly, a massive, dead companion to absorb the universe's gravitational insults and keep us safe. The lesson of the Orphan Planet is one of profound fragility. It shows us that the line between a world filled with poetry, art, and science, and a sterile, boiling mud ball scoured by supersonic winds, is terrifyingly thin. It is as thin as a sliver of silver light in the night sky. A light we look up at and forget that we owe it everything.